Title: Yosemite Nature Notes Black Bears. A small bear cub with light brown fur stands on a fallen tree trunk, scratching at the wood with its curved front claws. From above, a second cub hops down next to the first cub and waddles away. A full-grown bear, much larger than a human, stands in a field and munches on grass. The bear walks on all fours and has thick, shaggy fur. Its stocky body tapers to a narrow snout. Two large, rounded ears extend from the top of its head. In the woods, the two bear cubs frolic and play fight with each other, wrestling and rolling around until they run off together. In various parts of the park, other bears walk, eat, and relax. Their fur ranges from light brown to very dark brown.
Human beings relate to bears a lot more profoundly than they do to most other species, and the reason is because we have so many similarities. They're roughly our size, they're very intelligent, they eat the same foods that we do, and they compete with us. And that's an unusual situation.
A bear stares at us.
I think when you're looking face to face with a bear, you can recognize that cognition going on behind the eyes. That bear is calculating things, trying to decide who you are and what you're going to do, whether he's going to go back to eating or turn around and run or charge you.
A bear drops into an alert stance.
People either terrified of bears or think they're cute and cuddly, and they're somewhere in the middle. They spend the majority of their lives looking for food. And that's their major goal in life, is to get as much food as they can on a daily basis. You know, sort of in preparation for this long period of time where they're not going to have any. And the drive is just so deeply rooted, such an instinct for them.
Bears are very well equipped to find food. I mean, they are perfectly adapted to this. They've got a wonderful sense of smell, they've got a pretty good sense of sight, and they've got a good sense of curiosity. So they will not only remember where they found food sources before, but they'll investigate where they believe there might be food.
A bear nimbly climbs a tall tree. Elsewhere, a bear tears a tree trunk apart with its claws.
They're just an incredibly powerful animal. Their claws are perfect for ripping into things, really have great dexterity. Prehensile lip allows them to grab individual ants off a log and fish little acorns out of their cups.
A bear nibbles on a branch.
What it means is that they can have a very complex diet because they have the mental capabilities of testing all kinds of different foods for their quality, as well as recording geographically where different foods are at different times of the year. So they can develop a really complex seasonal map of where to go to find foods.
Two bears sit on thin branches in a treetop.
So where we get into the conflict with people is you have 4 million people a year, up to 500 bears or so in the park. Every single person that comes in brings some tasty camp food, and they're cooking it nonstop in the campgrounds. And there's people drop a lot of food scraps, and there's a lot of trash and refuse and waste that comes from all these visitors.
Tourists build campfires and cook piles of foil packs and corn.
When Yosemite became a national park, slowly but surely the interaction between human and bears picked up, because at the time there was no way to store human food. There was no way to store trash. Garbage bags hadn't even been invented yet. There were just dumps everywhere. Bears quickly learned that they'd come around humans and they would get food.
In old black and white footage, a tourist feeds a docile full-grown bear from her hand. More footage shows bears wandering through crowded tourist areas.
In the period from the 1920s to World War II, the bear parks developed feeding areas that were places where they could dump trash and put stands up and people could sit and watch bears.
And so as an attraction, it was very popular. As a way to reduce human-bear conflict, it actually backfired, because what they ended up doing was creating more and more conflicts between humans and bears, creating more of what they were calling nuisance bears, because they had become conditioned to using human food and habituated to the presence of humans.
A bear forages in a trash dump.
In 1972, the last dump was closed. So now these giant food sources are just removed. They're gone. They're not available for bears, and you have food-conditioned, habituated bears, and there's a lot of them now.
And the result was the same everywhere. If the bears weren't going to get the food at the end of the food chain, they were going to simply move up the line and go into the campgrounds and take the food directly from the source, and that's what happened. So when I arrived in Yosemite Valley in '74, it was chaos. It was simply chaos. and it looked like a madhouse.
Photos show bears running amok in campsites, grabbing food containers from trees, raiding picnic tables, climbing into dumpsters, and approaching tents at night.
They could flip trash cans open, they'd peel back the windows on cars and enter into cars, and they did what they needed to do to get food because that's what they had learned. They had learned that humans were a source of food, human vehicles were a source of food, human buildings, and so they were just doing what they had learned how to do.
Photos show a damaged metal picnic cooler and damaged cars with bent metal doors and panels.
The only solution to the problem, short of killing all the bears, is to make that food unavailable. And ultimately, that led to my suggestion that the park experiment with heavy plate steel lockers, big enough to stick a cooler in, and to put those in campsites. Turned out to be very complex and very expensive. But in 1977, the Park Service tried it at White Wolf Campground in Yosemite. Every single site had a locker, and a rather scary patrol ranger went through the campground right at dinner time and told everybody to put away their food in the lockers, or else.
In a campsite, a forklift gently sets down a brown-painted storage locker.
Every single site in Yosemite National Park has a food storage locker that people can use so they can get their food out of their vehicles, out of their tents, and store it in a place where bears cannot obtain it. So we spend a ton of our time going out and educating the public, going around and making sure everybody who's visiting the park is aware that, hey, if you leave your food out, there's a good chance a bear might get it, and it's going to change that bear's life forever.
A bear with a yellow tag.
Once they learn that they can get food from humans, they've learned it. They're not going to forget it. So that information is available to them. And so what was a wild bear foraging out on wild lands now becomes a bear that we're going to have these conflicts with.
The tagged bear squeezes into a car's open window.
The bears that are successful at obtaining human food then change their entire regime. They learn that aggression, which is, by the way, mostly fake aggression, is a really good tool to scare people away from their food if they won't leave. You know, a bluff charge is a really impressive thing.
A bear at night. The camera drops as the bear charges.
And then we have now created a monster that we really have no choice but to destroy.
Back at the car, the tagged bear climbs, rump first, out of the window, carrying a loaf of bread in its mouth.
I think living with black bears in national parks is going to require constant vigilance and management.
A large bear hops onto a log.
There are chores in this world, and one of them is the chores of managing food so that we can live with bears.
A bear chews and munches as it walks in a grassy field.
This park is here to protect those animals. This is their place. This is where they belong.
A bear runs through a meadow, then stops to look around.
Everyone has a chance to be part of the solution. Everyone has a chance to contribute to making this a better place, a wilder place, a more stunning place that'll last into the future. Everyone has that chance.
Two fuzzy bear cubs follow their mother through the woods, trotting to keep up.
If we do a consistent job of managing human food and making it largely unavailable to black bears, we can live with them. They're exciting, they're handsome, they're fascinating to watch, and I think we can live with them very well in national parks.
A large bear stands next to a tree. It slowly turns its head to meet our gaze. Credits. Produced by Stephen M. Bumgardner, featuring David Graber, Ryan Leahy, and Rachel Mazur. The National Park Service logo appears.